Welcome to Dead Talks. My name is David Ferrugio, and I'm your host. Today's episode is going to be a lot quicker. It's going to be different in a new edition of the podcast called Signs from the Afterlife. I know, very original name. Today, we're going to hear from Alexis, who is going to share a monologue and a story that she believes was an undeniable sign from her late husband. To me, it was incredible. It was beautiful, and I think hard to deny. I'm curious what you think, so please feel free to engage in the comments section. Let me know what you think, if you've had your own experiences, and if in fact this was a sign from the afterlife. I hope you enjoy our story and I hope to see you next time. Take care.
I am a flight attendant. So how it works when I go to work, I park an employee lot and I catch a shuttle over to the airport. I get dropped off at the terminal. One of the signs that me and my in-laws get from my husband a lot is multiples of 7. And I just wanted to share really quick how we figured out that multiples of 7 were a sign from Tanner. So within a few days after Tanner had died, because it was before we did the viewing, which we had done, I want to say 5 days after he died. So anyways, within a few days after he had died, my in-laws were all here. My father-in-law and my brother-in-law had went into the garage, and Tanner was a millwright, which is kind of like a carpenter. So he had a bunch of tools and like all these toolboxes, and one of the toolboxes had a combination code on it. I have no idea like what the code is, right? And they had come in and they had said, hey, do you know the code to Tanner's combination lock for one of his toolboxes? And for whatever reason, it was kind of like getting a message pop into my mind, but it wasn't like coming from me, if that makes sense. I don't know how I know this, but I think that the combination lock is 777. Weirdly, there was really no connection to that number. I mean, Tanner's favorite number was 8. So I don't know where the 7 came from. Anyways, they opened it and the combination lock was 777. And I don't really remember because this was so long ago, but basically one of the first things that had happened leading up to figuring out, oh, this is like a thing that's happening and it is a sign from him. You know, we were just kind of talking about angel numbers and reading up on stuff like that. Again, this is all in like the first few days after he had passed that. So Tanner's stepdad had been in charge of all the arrangements as far as like finding a funeral home and things like that. So, you know, he was taking care of a lot of the logistic parts. And so anyways, the day that we had gone to do the viewing, we needed to map it out. So my brother-in-law had asked what the address was, and Marty, that's my father-in-law, he said, oh, the address is 7777. It was 4 7s, whatever, you know, the street name was. And we were like, holy shit, that's so weird. Throughout the years, like it has continued on of like seeing a lot of 777s on like license plates or really just random other things, you know, of just weird. I don't know, I could get into that if you want me to, but that's a whole nother thing. But I wanted to explain where the 7 comes from and the importance of like leading up to the sign that I'm talking about. I had taken almost 2 years off of work after Tanner died. So he died in 2020. I went back to work in November of 2022. And then February of 2023, that was my first birthday back at work after Tanner died. And like, you know, if you are familiar with like grief, you know that birthdays can be really hard. Like for me, my birthday is really hard because I'm growing older without Tanner and he's stuck in time. I do always have a hard time on my birthday. This was my first year back at work since he died on my birthday. I decided to work. I usually never work on my birthday, but this time I decided to work, and I was like, I'm gonna stay distracted. I picked up a trip that was in Hawaii to visit my family because that's where they live. I'm gonna stay distracted with my birthday. Well, the night before my birthday, I just start having a hard time and I was like crying, and I was kind of talking to Tanner out loud, and I asked him if he would send me a sign for my birthday. Normally ask Tanner for a specific sign that I'm looking for. This time I decided to leave it up to him, but I had asked him, I had said, I need a sign, but it needs to be big, it needs to be undeniable. That's like one of the things that I had told him, that The sign had to be undeniable that it was him. So day of my birthday, I go to work, and for whatever reason, I think, obviously parking in the employee parking lot and then having to catch a shuttle over all of that, it's like really big pain in the ass. So I decided to treat myself and pay for my parking and park right at the airport so I could just walk into the airport and not have to worry about like the shuttle and all of that. I do that. I park in the garage and I pay for my parking. And I specifically remember, like, I was looking on my phone walking through the parking lot, and I, was looking at where my gate was and whatever. And then I get closer to the airport. I would say I'm on like the last row of like cars, and I put my phone down. I look up, and literally right in front of me is a car with a license plate, and the license plate says Tanner 7. And that's a sign you can't deny. That's literally his name, which is not a common name, and it's the number 7. And also think about it, what are the chances that I would see a license plate like that? You would think that I would have a better chance seeing it out driving, right? I guess. Well, I don't know. Maybe not. But anyways, it was just one of those things. What are the chances? I was literally looking at my phone the whole entire time. What are the chances that I parked in the garage today instead of parking out at the employee parking lot? And also the fact that I had asked him for a sign that I could not deny, because, if you ever get signs from your loved ones, you kind of have like doubt, or at least I do. I'm like very skeptical, but I also know that those things are real and like that he's there, but it's hard sometimes to really, I guess, maybe comprehend that they are there. And so this was the signiest sign that he could send. This is my name. This is, number 7. That is my story of probably the most profound sign that I've gotten from my husband. However, there are so many. And I also wanted to include, it's funny because when I had written to, wherever you had posted, if people wanted to share their signs, when I had submitted this story, I don't know when that was. I guess it was like a few months ago, something like that. And then the day that you had emailed me is so weird, because I actually had a reading with a medium that day, like a long awaited reading from a medium that I had been wanting to get a reading with for a while. And she was like spot on for everything. And the funniest thing is that she had asked, does your husband send you signs on license plates? And like I said, this was the same exact day that you had emailed me, and I had totally almost forgotten that I had sent you the story, like this particular story about license plates.